And it came to pass, after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. So where's David? So the Bible editors are making it totally clear. The king is supposed to be leading with the direction of God. Remember, in the past, David had been inquiring of the Lord, should I go up to battle here or not? At this point, it's almost like, I'm this wealthy, rich king. I'll just delegate for everybody else. And he's not doing what is his role. So he stays behind in Jerusalem and distracts himself and creates and causes a grievous sin.
This is a really, really critical point here. To be in the right place at the right time will be a shield of faith against temptation for us. Often, it's not that we're so weak, it's that we allow ourselves to be put in positions or places where we've opened ourselves up for temptation that if we were in the right place at the right time, that wouldn't have even been a temptation for us, which I think is one of the main points of these biblical editors here in chapter 11 to say, kings should be going to battle. And at the bottom of verse 1 it says, but David tarried still at Jerusalem. So he stayed behind. He didn't go where he was supposed to go. And you'll notice at the beginning of chapter 1, or chapter 11, verse 1, there's no sign of him turning to the Lord. It doesn't mean that he didn't. It's just everywhere else it's talking about him turning heavenward, and here he didn't. So notice the verbs. He tarried. Now, let's keep the story going in verse 2. It came to pass that in the eventide that David arose from off his bed, he walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. You'll notice which direction David's eyes are going at this point. He's up on his roof, and he's now looking down. Now, it's a metaphor for this idea of here's this amazing person, and all of a sudden he's no longer looking heavenward. He's looking down.
Yeah, he's in his palace. You got to realize that the city of David is built on this hill. So the king his palace is nearly at the top of the hill. So it's easy for him to look down mountain or downhill. What if he'd actually turned the other way and looked a bit uphill? What would he had seen? It would have been the tent of the Lord, the tabernacle. The temple had not yet been built. But symbolically, he should have been looking uphill to God. And when I read this story, I think about a lesson I heard years ago at BYU Education Week, and I wish I could remember the name of the speaker, but very fascinating insights. He indicated that if you take the names of the people involved here, you have David, which we know means beloved. You have this woman named Bathsheba, and that actually means daughter and covenant. So daughter of the covenant. And her husband's name is Uriah. Turns out that means light of Jehovah. And so what does David do? So he has extinguished the light of Jehovah, which now, because of that, has enticed him to transgress or break boundaries with a daughter of the covenant. So just some interesting symbols we have going on with the names.
Isn't it fascinating that it's not as if David's story arc looks like this, and then he commits adultery with Bathsheba and ends up like that? Life is a little more nuanced. It's a little more complex, not quite so simple as this, where that experience, I don't know how to draw this to scale, and I don't know exactly what it would be like, but the experience with Bathsheba would definitely take him significantly down. At which point, David would have the option of recognizing what had happened and fully repenting at that point, turning to the Lord, pleading for forgiveness, turning to Uriah, pleading for forgiveness from everybody involved. And my hunch is that if he had turned heavenward at that point, he would have then continued to progress towards heaven. But instead, he made a mistake, and instead of going heading heavenward, he then tries to cover it himself. He looks for solutions to cover up the fact that Bathsheba is now pregnant and Uriah was not home. He's off at the war, so he tries to cover it up using worldly means, calls Uriah back from the battle. But this light of Jehovah character refuses to go and stay at his house while all of his fellow soldiers are sleeping out on the battlefield. And so David tries multiple ways to get him to go home, and he won't go home. So then David does the unthinkable of sending him back out to the battlefront with a sealed decree that is Uriah's own death sentence. And Uriah faithfully and obediently and diligently delivers that to the captain, who then reads it and puts him on the front line where he's going to be killed, thus causing another downturn. Brothers and sisters, the point we're trying to make here is it doesn't matter where you are in your own story arc of life. At every single junction, you have a decision to make. You can either turn heavenward, or you can turn to the world's solutions, or down to the devil's temptations. And you will go the direction you face. Regardless of whether you're progressing or whether you've struggled, the invitation here for me throughout this storyline is look to God and live. Don't try to cover it up. Now, isn't it ironic that David gets Uriah killed? He then brings Bathsheba into his household. He marries her. And he's probably thinking, whew, crisis averted. We're good. Whew, covered that up. No one's going to know. Well, then chapter 12 comes along. Nathan the prophet comes in to speak to David. And this has to be one of the saddest stories of the entire Bible. This prophet having to come in and confront King David with what the Lord has given him. So you'll notice in verse 1, the Lord sent Nathan unto David. So he comes in, and instead of just coming in saying, David, I know what you did, and this is what's going to happen. No, Nathan's a lot more elegant than that. He comes in and he says, so David, I have a problem. I have a situation, and I need your judgment. I need your help on this. There were two men. One, very rich, has a huge flock of sheep, and his neighbor only has a single ewe lamb, and he loves that ewe lamb, and he takes care of that ewe, and it's just a beautiful relationship. Well, this rich guy has some visitors come, and he wants to throw a party for them. So he went and he got the single ewe lamb of his neighbor, and he killed it, and he threw the party for these guests. What should I do in that situation? You'll notice verse 5, and David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die. And now some of the saddest words in the entire Bible, verse 7. And Nathan said to David, thou art the man. Can you picture that moment? By the way, can you picture David? He's maybe pacing back and forth in anger. How dare that guy do that? How terrible can you be? He shall surely die. Can you picture him? Maybe blood pressure raised. He's breathing heavily, and Nathan standing there saying, David, thou art the man. And can you picture that moment of realization of, oh, all of my efforts to cover my sin, they didn't cover it. God knows, Nathan knows. Oh no, and his kingdom, his world, comes crushing down on him in one moment, that realization. And for the rest of David's life, it seems, he spends the rest of his life lamenting and pleading with God for help and for mercy and forgiveness.